Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Wellzest podcast. You are in for such a treat today because I have Dr. Chad Scott, who is a therapist and avid traveler, on the podcast, and I can't wait to talk about dark tourism and his new book. I want to actually go through everything that Dr. Scott has done. So let me just introduce you really quickly. Dr. Chad Scott is a therapist and educator who turned profound personal adversity into a mission to explore how travel can support healing. In his critically acclaimed book, Beyond the Darkness, he explores dark tourism sites like Auschwitz and Ground Zero, not to sensationalize, but to uncover what they reveal about grief, resilience, and the human capacity to heal. Blending lived experience with clinical insight, Dr. Scott brings a powerful perspective on using movement, history, and meaningful travel as tools for emotional growth, especially in the wake of trauma, loss, or major life transitions. Dr. Scott, I'm so excited. Thank you for joining us today.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes, such a jazz. And we were just,
Yeah.
connecting before about our passion for travel and exploration and, kind of going to those
Yeah, travel's
places.
a beautiful thing.
Totally. My favorite thing. It was like, I always say to people, I'm like, if, anyone who knows me knows this, travel and a good walk are like my forms of therapy sometimes, a
Yeah,
good trip and a
yeah,
good walk.
yeah. Well, I had a liver transplant last year,
Oh,
and
wow.
I was kind of backsliding. It was in March, and it's kind of cold and
Right,
crappy weather in Minnesota in March.
right,
And
right.
I went to LA of all the places. So I was in your neck of the woods.
Oh, my neck of the
And
woods.
yeah, and out of all the things to do in LA, I was in the Hollywood Forever Cemetery and the Pierce
Yep.
Westwood Cemetery, and
Yes.
and
Yep.
and that's actually where my idea for the book came to me, was when I was out in LA recovering from my transplant, so I could get some walking in,
No
and that's where I
way.
chose to hang out.
No way. What was your
Yeah.
experience like? I'm curious. Was that your first time in the Hollywood Forever Cemetery? And what did you think
Yeah, it
about
was
it?
my first time in those cemeteries. I've been to LA a small handful of times, but yeah, I was in the Hollywood Forever Cemetery, visiting Toto and Judy Garland and one
Yep.
of my favorite
Yep.
singers. Now I can't think of his name, but my gosh.
No worries. I do that.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, Burt
Great.
Reynolds and the Ramon brothers, or
Yeah.
Ramon,
Yep.
they're not brothers, but the Ramones. Yeah, a
Reruns.
lot of
Yes.
people. Yeah, and then over at Pierce Westwood, they have Marilyn Monroe and one of my
Yeah.
favorite, Rodney Dangerfield. Yeah,
Yeah. Oh, that's
yeah,
right. It's,
yeah,
is it just me, or do you feel the energy when you're in places like that? Do you really feel the energy,
yeah,
the
yeah.
stories?
Actually, coming back to me, so Chris Cornell, he one of my favorite
Ah,
singers growing up, and and when you stand there, for one, I like parks and things like that, but going to a cemetery is like going to a park. You can, they have benches, and then you walk around, and it's like, okay, there's Chris Cornell, there's Burt Reynolds, and and it's just beautiful and serene, and it's relaxing, and you get your steps in, and and you go, and when can you ever be alone with Chris Cornell or Burt Reynolds? And you just, thank them, and you think of them, and you think about their struggles, and you think about their successes. And, and actually both those people, I mean, they had a lot of struggles and a lot of successes, and,
mm,
and kind of going there and reflecting on that. And when you do that, you're walking on hallowed ground when you're on a cemetery. And a lot of the places in dark tourism, you are literally on hallowed ground. And you get these such profound reflections by being there, and it hits you on such an emotional level. So I don't
mm.
think people realize how much, because maybe 10% of things we can perceive and think about, and that's 10%, but there's so much going on in the back of our brains that's computing, just like a computer. There's so much going on in the background, and dark tourism is like that, where there's you go there, but you'll never forget these experiences. They resonate
So
so much
true.
emotionally. They burn into your hippocampus, and you just, they're with you forever. And sometimes they come back and sort of repay you for visiting these places, and I'm sure we'll get into that.
Yes, absolutely. You know, it's so interesting. I had to be honest, I always had a fear of cemeteries. You know, I was like, ooh, I
Yeah.
don't really know.
Yeah.
Like, I feel, it's a little spooky.
Right.
And, as I've traveled more, gotten older, and, I totally agree with you, the reverence, the hallowed ground. And for me, it was really interesting once. I was going to, I was living in St. Martin during COVID at one point, and we were flying to
Wow.
St. Bart. And there were all of these people dressed in white on the plane. I was like, hey, what is happening? Like, why are all these people dressed in white? Someone had this like cool wig, and turns out they were on, kind of like a pilgrimage to see Johnny Holiday, which is like a famous French singer. They were
Oh,
on a pilgrimage to go to his grave.
wow.
And
Yeah.
we went to the grave too. We saw them all there, and people were crying, and everyone was singing. I mean, it was actually this really moving, beautiful experience. I was like, wow, this is
Yeah.
so cool. They're traveling.
Yeah.
And,
That's great.
yeah, and my boyfriend was talking to one of them, and they were just talking about how much they like loved his music, and just to be there to celebrate him was so powerful.
Yeah, I talk about going to Pierre Lachaise, which is in, it's probably, might be one of the most beautiful, reverent, Gothic cemeteries anybody will ever go to, but it's in Paris,
Right,
and
right.
and yeah, and Oscar Wilde is there, and
Yeah,
Frederic Chopin, the composer,
yeah, Chopin, right.
but
Yep.
Jim Morrison from the Doors is there, and that's why I wanted to go there. And
Oh,
but I loved Jim Morrison when I was a kid. I remember driving around in my little truck when I was 16, 17 years old, going to parties and trying to find the girls, and you got Light My Fire in the background, and it's like going to those places is it brings back those memories, and
yeah, for
it's
sure.
just it's much more profound than the average person would think.
Absolutely, absolutely. You talk about your love for the Doors and memories from childhood. Tell me about you as a child. Like, what was your childhood like, and how do you feel like were there key moments that you feel like influenced the work that you are doing today?
Yeah, so I could literally take this camera and show you outside, and it's the hockey rinks. There's outdoor hockey rinks, and the building I'm in was the clinic I grew up in, or
Oh, no
the
way.
clinic I went to when I grew up in. And now it's different, and I have my therapy clinic in here, but. So hockey was a major thing during my childhood. I was a sports nut. Wasn't an academic person at all. I barely got by in school, and yeah, it was about sports and having fun. But we did a lot of traveling as a kid, and I think I learned a lot more on my trips than I ever did in a classroom. I enjoyed history, I enjoyed those types of classes, but I never tried. And but those I think were the fuel. But we went to visit relatives around the world or around the country, and we'd stop at a lot of historical sites and museums and things like that. And and when I got older, I started traveling on my own, and then I traveled a lot with my son. I was a single dad for ever since he was 4,
Okay.
and we went. I brought him places every year, and I really remembered how much it was part of my education growing up, and I think that's why I got to college, and then I started taking more human service, psychology, history classes, and really started excelling in school, and I ended up with a doctorate. But I think it was my travel experiences that allowed me to get to where I'm at, for sure, or at
Absolutely.
least a big part of it.
Was there one trip, one place early on that really moved you, that stood out to you, that was transformative?
Gosh, that's a really good question. I think the places that are the most different are the ones that resonate the most. When I was young, the one that keeps hitting me a little bit is, San Diego, but I don't know why. San Diego with
Love
the
San
with the
Diego.
military. We did visit my uncle who was in the
Love
military
it.
there, in the Navy, and toured the ships, and and I for some reason that always has stuck with me, and just like that was my first big trip. I think that was my first airplane trip. So it was kind of a culture shock in a good way. I remember going to to Disneyland, and it was just like such a moving experience. I think my brain, when I think what was my most transformative young trip, I mean, I think my first trip, and that was my first big trip, I guess.
I love I lived in San Diego for probably like 4 years, and it was
Yeah.
actually the place that drove my catalyst to move to California. When
Yeah,
I
it's
was like,
such
all right,
a
this is
you
it.
can't beat the
We're
weather,
moving.
and
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and you got Old Town. I mean,
Stunning.
it's just such a the zoo. I mean, there's so many
It's so beautiful.
for
Such
a
a great.
5-year-old that's never been anywhere. That
Yeah.
that was
It's
amazing
magical.
experience. Yeah, magical, definitely.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, walk me through, some of the things over the last few years that you feel like travel has taught you. And how has travel been a, maybe meditative practice during some of your struggles?
Yeah, I think a lot of people, especially my specialty in travel is dark tourism, and I think a lot of people go on dark tourism for a lot of the same reasons they would go on religious pilgrimages. You're asking those big questions, the existential types of questions. When I was literally dying of a liver disease, I went to Jerusalem and I went to Egypt, and
Wow.
that's when I went to Auschwitz and Berlin, and a lot of these places that, and I always ended up in more of the darker places because that was my interest, and I actually when I was in the cemetery in in LA, that's when it came to me. It's like, man, these experiences really, why do I find myself in these places all the time? And it's because of all
Right.
the reflections and things I'd get. So I'd go to these places, and you just start seeing little pieces of yourself in all of these places. And it's not that you go there with that intention. I always went there, for basically two reasons. One was my interest in history, because you're walking on that hallowed ground, and you get to see, where they stormed the beaches, or they,
Right.
whatever event happened. But also you go to pay your respects. When I, storming the beaches, you go to Normandy, and you reflect on, gosh, this must have been terrifying. This must have, like the the sense of, honor for, fighting for your country, and and the resolve that they had, and you just develop this reverence, and when you do that, and you also empathize. So when I say reverence plus empathy, equals really profound reflections, and they really can teach you a lot of lessons, and every site I've been to has taught me different lessons. Like in Hiroshima, you go in, and I wasn't really expecting this. Like I've always, like, okay, was it wrong? Probably, that to bomb Hiroshima and Nagasaki. But when you go there and you're in there with these school-aged children, and they're looking at murals on the wall that look just like them, that that were
Wow.
from the day the bomb dropped, and it's like the guilt I had going through there. I never thought
Yeah.
how guilty I would feel going through there being an American, and and that's a lot of I came out of there. I've always been against nuclear war, and but when you come out of there and you come out as I'm gonna really stand up for this. It gives you kind of that sense of wanting to fight for that, and and I already saw one of the questions that you had been thinking of asking, and what's a place that you had a hard time leaving? Hiroshima. I did not want to leave Hiroshima,
Wow. How's
and
what? How
and
come?
I think it's because it's like I wanted to help. It's like I
Yeah.
just didn't feel good leaving, and I'm kind of tearing up with this because you just feel so guilty.
Yeah. It's so true. I think that that's the thing that people sometimes forget about travel. When you go to places in the world where, especially your country, has done something that is difficult or horrifying to another country, it's hard not to feel the burden of that. It's
Yeah.
hard not to look at the people,
Yeah.
the next generation who,
Absolutely.
or, even the current generation. And
Yeah.
we'll talk a little bit more about, travel now, but
Yeah.
how do you look people in the eyes and see their humanity and not feel a sense of guilt?
Oh,
It's
absolutely.
difficult.
I work 2 days a week on a Native American reservation. And so they're still affected by
Yeah.
what we did to them. We think of, I walked the Boston Freedom Trail a couple weeks ago. And it's like, okay, you feel this like honor, like this, like, hey, we defeated the British and we became independent. And it's like fireworks and happiness and, we won. But then you go to places like Wounded Knee and, and it's like, we didn't, America wasn't founded on just good things, beating the British. We really hurt people. Go down to the Whitney Plantation in New Orleans, or
Yeah.
by New Orleans. That is, in the United States, that to me is what affected me the most out of all the places I've been in direct tourism in the United States. Because it tells the history of slavery from the slave's point of view. It's not it's a beautiful plantation, but it tells it from the slavery point of view, and the main house is just a pass through, and you see the monuments and the heads on the pikes and the stories,
Oh,
and
man.
it's like you leave there and obviously slavery is like probably the worst injustice we've ever done, but as a nation, but so I left there and I had a lot of reflections, a lot of emotions, and I'm a therapist, and it's like it just made me want to work even harder for kids,
Yeah, for
because
sure.
the kids that were there, it really talked a lot about the children of the slaves, and
Right.
and you leave there and you want to be a better father, you want to be a better human being, you want to you help kids that are being abused, and so it even though you're reflecting on things that happened hundreds of years ago in a lot of cases, or even thousands of years ago, there's relevance in today's life. And that's really what my book is about, is going to these places, reflecting on the horrors of a lot of these places, or the people that are buried in the ground, and they might not have had stories like Auschwitz or something, but like Judy Garland, she had her own struggles, and
Right.
and you go and you reflect on these, and they etch emotionally, and you take their lessons. It's kind of like they passed a torch in a way where it's like you don't just remember them, you kind of fight for, they didn't die in vain.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. I love what you said about the children. I think about that too. I mean, like, oftentimes you go to a place and that's in conflict and war, or people are being subjugated, and you look at the innocent children and like, they didn't choose this.
Right.
They're being brought into a world where there's circumstances beyond their control, and this is what's happening will impact the trajectory of their lives infinitely, and generations to come. And how do
Absolutely.
you to sit with that is
Yeah.
just such weight,
Yeah. Yeah.
so
There's an Ojibwe belief that trauma is passed on 7 generations.
yeah,
But
exactly.
through the study of epigenetics, they found that is actually kind of true, where your DNA, when you go through such a trauma, especially if you go through a trauma like cultural genocide, like Native Americans, or slavery, or just being abused over and over by a parent, that actually alters a person's the way they express their DNA through their generations, and it takes about 7 generations for it to kind of resolve. And so we really are still suffering for the wounds of our ancestors, and and some people suffer more than others, and some races and cultures suffer more than others. So
So important to think, and
yeah.
it's like, how do we do the work now? Do you find that in therapy and your practice, do you have clients who come in, they're stuck in a pattern, and as you unpack their lineage, history, that there are generational wounds that are driving their story and some of their trauma?
Generational trauma historical trauma is very real, without a doubt. And that's why I think a lot of these dark tourism places are very important, because they not only give voice to the people that suffered, but they give voice to the people that are still suffering. And, for example, somebody who is a Native American who, might be struggling trying to get back to their roots, because getting back to your roots and learning about your roots and there's a lot of healing in cultural practices, and going out to a place like Wounded Knee, or there's a place in Mankato, Minnesota here where several Native Americans were hanged, and it was actually green lighted by Abraham Lincoln.
Horrifying.
Yeah, and going to places like that, is healing. Where for example, people who were in the Vietnam War, oftentimes they'll go back to Vietnam many years later, even though they suffered with PTSD, or even Normandy or wherever they fought. And they'll go back there many years later. It's very emotional, but it's also very healing.
Wow. Right. Of course. It literally gives me chills just thinking about that.
Yeah.
I want to take a step back, and I want to have you define dark tourism. There's all these different definitions. There's controversy out there on, dark tourism, whether it's ethical, whatnot. But I would love to just have you actually define what it means to you.
Yeah. So I'm going to go off what the researchers say. So dark tourism, it's been around for millennia. They back in the day they used to, and they still do, but go to the Battle of Marathon and the Colosseum, the witch trials, and so dark tourism it's as long as people have memorialized others, dark tourism has been around. About 83% of all Americans have actually gone to dark tourism spots, and another 10% we're hoping to or planning to. So it's very common. So in the 1990s, like 96 or 98 or something, there were researchers by the name of Lennon and Foley, I believe, and they coined the term dark tourism. And
interesting.
Yeah, so it's an academic discipline. It's an academic term. So it sounds sensational, but it's actually it's actually an academic term to describe going to places. So this is the definition now. So it's going to places that are associated with death, trauma, suffering, disaster, and the macabre.
How did you first get into dark how did you transition from hey, I'm going on holiday and woo, to going to places that have such weight and are somber and are born out of difficult circumstances and situations?
Yeah, my whole, almost my whole chapter one is that's what it's about. It's how did I become a dark tourist? So it really started off with going to these historical places with my parents. In college, I really liked anthropology. That's probably my favorite class. So then you started learning about taboo subjects and what is taboo. And so I started going to places that are a little more taboo. And, and I remember being at Sloppy Joe's. It's a bar in Key West. It was Ernest Hemingway's favorite bar, Sloppy Joe's.
Yes, I've been there. Yes.
Yeah. Great place. And a guy came over to us. He was a local. And he was saying, well, you guys should check out the cemetery. It's really weird and quirky, and you wouldn't think about going there. I'm like, gosh, go to a cemetery. Okay, we'll check it out. Well, so we went there the next day. And it had all these, interesting epitaphs like, I told you I was sick, and, devoted fan of Julio Iglesias. And, I remember one, he had his shirt off, and he's like flexing his muscles on his picture on his tombstone. And it's like, and then there's chickens running around, like they are in Key West, but they're in the cemetery, and it's all above ground, or a lot of it is above ground. And so it was really an interesting place. So me and my girlfriend at the time, who became my wife, who became my ex-wife, we went to cemeteries. Every time we went somewhere, we went to one or two cemeteries, and we she was very much a historical, enjoyed history too, and so we'd end up in a lot of more dark related history, and I think I sort of insidiously got into it, I'd go to maybe like I would say lower level types of places, graveyard, or not, I wouldn't say
Right.
mid level graveyards, and some just historical sites like the 9/11 Memorial, which is that's a pretty profound
Oh,
place,
yeah.
and Pearl Harbor, and places in the
Right.
U.S. especially, and I just slowly just started finding myself gravitating towards those places. So everywhere I went, I would search out these places, and I didn't do it on a necessarily a like I wasn't looking for dark. I didn't even know what the term dark tourism was. I just ended up in these places. So it wasn't until maybe 3 years ago that I read this article in National Geographic. I was actually in Oslo, and
Love Oslo.
yeah, great place.
Yeah.
I was in Oslo, and I read this article, and it talked about dark tourism and that it was an academic discipline, and that a lot of the places I had been to was considered dark tourism. And the person that they were interviewing in this article was a guy named Dr. Philip Stone, and he's the director of this Institute for Dark Tourism Research. Anyway, I recognized then and there that I was a dark tourist, and fast forward a few months, well, several months, I put out the concise edition of my book. So I had my transplant, went through this concise edition, or wrote this concise edition of the book, and this Philip Stone contacted me. He sent me an email, and so we've kind of developed this friendship. And he actually wrote the foreword of the book that I have out now. So that was coming full circle.
Amazing. When
Yeah.
you were telling, like, when you talked to people and said, like, hey, I just visited this graveyard, or I went, what were people's reactions? What did your family think?
That's just Chad. I guess I've always been maybe I wouldn't say I beat to this a different drum or whatever, but because I think a lot of people do go to these places. Everywhere
Right.
how many people have gone to Arlington National Cemetery? Well, that's really
Exactly.
dark tourism. You
Right.
go there and you I remember, like, I'm a pilot, and standing with
Oh,
John
cool.
Glenn
Yep.
or Jimmy Doolittle, these famous pilots. The Challenger crash, I remember being in fifth grade or whatever it was when the Challenger crashed, and and that was such a something, talk about being etched in your hippocampus. It's like I remember when they died, like the very moment. And you go there, and then gosh, JFK, and it's like it's so moving, and it's like that just doesn't leave you. I mean, so you can go to a museum, you can read a book, you can watch a movie, a documentary, and you learn these things. But typically they just kind of you learn them, you retain them for a while, they go away, and unless you reinforce it with other learning, they typically go away, what you learn. But when you go to a dark tourism spot, and again, when you're standing on hallowed ground, and you learn it on such an emotional level, and intelligence, emotional intelligence is fluid. It can go up, but when you're like you're just regular academic type of intelligence, it doesn't increase. You're basically stuck with what your God gave you.
Right.
But emotional intelligence, and that's why I think a lot of people like podcasts, and because you can
Right.
increase your emotional intelligence.
Right.
And but these experiences, I think, in terms of return on investment and bang for your buck, maybe this and psychedelics maybe might be the most life-changing things. I actually
Right.
just listened to your recent episode on psychedelics. So
Yes. Oh, you did? Oh,
yeah,
good.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Jimmy is
yeah. And I
amazing.
I
Oh,
was going to tell you, I could almost place everything related to dark tourism into what he said about psychedelics, and it'd be almost similar, because
wow.
it is so life-changing. Because
How
I would say
fascinating.
both psychedelics and dark tourism. I mean, it's kind of like this. Astronauts talk about this overview effect, where they go up to
Right.
space and they see how small they are in the world, and they see how large the universe. Sometimes they feel this profound depression when they see that, like, oh my God, I am this like I'm a
Right.
nothing. My life is tiny, But it changes their life for the better once they get the return back home, and they talk about how moving it was. And dark tourism is like that. It's like you go through these places. A lot of them, I literally do not like being there. I feel sick being
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Auschwitz, oh my God, it's like that was my
Oh, I
guts.
can't even
I
imagine.
I felt like throwing
I
up
can't even.
walking through Auschwitz.
Ugh.
You go down into that gas. There's a gas chamber that's still standing, and you go in there and you envision the people. It's just this like giant basement looking thing, but you go in there and you just like the sadness seeps through the cracks. I mean, you see the people, envision them dropping one by one, and then you walk out past the crematorium furnaces, and they have rail tracks, and it's just like hits you. It's like, oh my God, this is just it's hard to even put words on.
Yeah.
And then you walk out the other side, and it's like you walk out. You're a changed person when you're on the other side of that building, and a lot of these dark tourism spots are like that. And you go in as yourself, but you come out a better, changed version of yourself. And I would say, life, it puts life into perspective. You appreciate life more. You have much more gratitude. You love deeper. You learn to stop and smell the roses. It slows life down, and you appreciate your life a lot more, and you're just much more committed to helping people, because a lot of atrocities happened, and it's like you just that doesn't sit right with you. And when you leave the other side, you're just much more committed to being a good person. So these places are really significant.
Incredible that you're able to reframe, like going to the place. I have not been to Auschwitz. I have not had the opportunity to go. For me too, I think also by design, it's just something that's so difficult that I can't even, I mean, I feel like I'm going to have to really mentally prepare to go.
Right.
And
you do. If you didn't go with that mindset, if you went in kind of as a tourist.
Yeah, flippant, right.
That's to me, it's dishonorable to just kind of do that. Okay. And you can actually hurt. I believe, like, when you don't have empathy, when you go in just kind of as like, oh, look at these interesting things that happened,
right.
You actually are hurting not only their memory, but you're hurting yourself, because you're not as empathetic to people. You desensitize yourself to suffering. But if you go in with reverence and a lot of empathy, you learn to empathize more. You develop a greater range of emotions because of the emotions you felt.
Yes. The anger would be hard for me though. Like how could we?
Yeah.
As you're saying with Hiroshima, like how could we as humans do this to each other? And why do we continue to do things like that? That's a whole other podcast. Like multiple series.
I wish I had the answers for those, but you definitely you go. And I want to address like are you going there to dwell in other people's suffering? And no. Because I think that's one of the misnomers with dark tourism is you're for example, Auschwitz and the Whitney Plantation and a lot of these places, the victims are, the survivors, I should say, are the ones that are advising these people. And it's not people going in there to try to make money. So if it's somebody just going and trying to make money off other people's suffering, I would say avoid those at all costs. Kind of like the place in Pennsylvania where was it Flight 93? I'm blanking out. But there was a farmer that was charging people to go see the crash site after the crash in 9/11. Yeah. So, then obviously that was seen as very unethical, and it is, but now it's the government bought it, and it's a historical site, and the families have had a say in how they want their stories told, and so
Do you feel like there's something in travel that unlocks things that therapy, traditional therapy can't?
Oh, for sure. I think there's a lot of things that unlock that traditional therapy can't. I don't think there's any growth in comfort zones, and and I like to tell my clients, comfort zones are for couch potatoes, and therapy is, it's a tool, and it works well, but it's typically you got to do the work outside of therapy. You can listen, or you can read a self-help book, and it's going to do absolutely nothing if you don't actually put in the work. And,
Right.
you know,
Right. Right.
when you face your fears, no matter what they are, when you step outside of your comfort zone, no matter how small your comfort zone is, I mean, for some people, like, I didn't go to Auschwitz the first day I became a dark tourist. I mean, it really led up to
Yeah.
that.
Right.
Could I have? Maybe, but, would I have gotten the same out of it? I don't know. But, but for some of my clients, I mean, even going to the grocery store is stepping out of their comfort zone. And it's like, so any stepping out of your comfort zone outside of therapy is healthy and good, as long as it's, obviously you're not doing something really stupid, like injecting heroin. Okay, that's out of my comfort zone and should be, but,
Right. Right.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
What, I'm just curious, you've talked about just the transformation that you've had, and I know you're, coming off of having a liver transplant. So first of all, how are you doing? And, what are the lessons too through all of your travels that have helped you through, something that's so difficult?
Yeah.
How have you stayed grounded? What are the things that you've pulled from your travels to keep you moving forward?
Well, it's interesting because, I had I would say, well, I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder. I had a lot of difficulties with autoimmune issues about 10 years ago. And I had this anxiety was basically on steroids. And actually I was on steroids because of the autoimmune issues, and coming off the steroids, going on the steroids. I mean, it does so much to your anxiety. And and my wife left me at that time, and my dad got really sick. He survived and was fine, but the doctor literally said it was a coin toss. And then I ended up getting this. They thought it was ulcerative colitis, and didn't. I mean, so I went through this really dark, horrible time, and I failed. I did so poorly during that time, and as a therapist, it's like I couldn't. I am ashamed of how badly I did. But at the same time, I have a story to tell, and it's like my suffering became my strength. And I think Jelly Roll. I love Jelly Roll, and when you're beat down, I mean, there's nothing better than a good resilience story and redemption story, and and that's my story. I just failed. I failed in my marriage. I failed in my life, and I started doing a lot of solo travel then, because my travel partner was gone, and so I did a lot of solo travel, and I found myself in these dark places, and that's really where they came and helped me. I mean, I did a lot of the traditional stuff. Like I went to therapy myself. I started meditating, and so I did a lot of the things that I would tell my clients to do on a regular basis, but I think what helped me the most is when I stepped into these dark spots. And when I was going through my own suffering, I think I sought them out even more, and I sought out even maybe the darker places on a subconscious level. I think, over time that subconscious became conscious, that like, oh gosh, I really was seeking out the dark because of what they were helping me. They're helping me to not feel so alone in my struggles. And, that, you see, again, like you see little pieces of yourself when you go to these places. And some of these people that suffered, and some of them survived, some of them got through, and you hear the dark stuff, but you also hear the stories of survival, and even like I say, going to these celebrity cemeteries. It's not going and just kind of like, ooh, look at the cool celebrities. It's like really reflecting on their lives. They're again, their difficulties and their triumphs, and you learn from that. And when I say you learn on an emotional level, it sticks with you. And what I noticed when I was going through, it's because I had a few years where I was doing a pretty good, and then my liver went out the door. But when I was going again through my dark period with the liver disease, I had almost no anxiety, because I think I really put in the work with dark tourism. And there's a lot of I almost started thinking in terms of history, where I was called down to Minneapolis to get my transplant. So I got back from Oslo. I started getting sick in Oslo, And I got back, I took a blood test, and like my liver numbers were off the chart. And within a month I was on the transplant list. And 6 weeks, actually a month after that, I had my first call to go to the Twin Cities and at the University of Minnesota is where I got my transplant. And my liver was in Atlanta, or not Atlanta, St. Louis. And they there was a delay, and I guess they were waiting for the person to pass away, which is like really weird feeling to have, because
Yeah.
it's like you're waiting for somebody to die to save your own life. It's like, again, I don't even know how to put emotions on that. That's it. But there was a delay. And I think in terms of history, so I started thinking about the people on D-Day. There was a delay there. They were getting ready to go. They were giving the speech, and they were ready to ship off. And then a storm came in, and they had to delay it a day. And it's like, okay, now I'm delayed. And I started kind of thinking of them, and it was their mission to get to the beach and to get to the other side and fight on. And at this time, my lungs are the sac around my lungs are starting to fill up with fluid, and I can hardly breathe, and my eyes are just yellow, and my skin's starting to turn yellow, and I'm itchy, and it's like everything. And then I got a call in the middle of the night, and my doctor says, I wanted to run one more test on your liver since the guy was still alive, and the family said no, take it or leave it, and my doctor left it. And then I'm like, am I going to die because this family backed out because my doctor said no? I mean, it's like and again, so then I really found comfort in my dark tourism, where I think when you go to enough of these places, you just naturally become a stoic in terms of, in a healthy kind of stoic, not the John Wayne, nothing bothers me type of stoic. You become a stoic in terms of like, you control what you can, and the things you can't control, you have to let go. And I think going to these places naturally lends to you becoming a stoic. And I don't think there's any healthier attitude to have when you're going through your own suffering than being a stoic. And I went back home. I suffered for a couple weeks, and then I got another phone call, and I got my liver, and and everything was fine, other than then I had to recover. But yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, but I went through that whole process. I mean, I would say it's like that generalized anxiety I had. I if anything, I lack anxiety now. It's like I've learned to control it so well that it just isn't something that is an issue anymore. And actually, I probably have a healthy level, but
Right.
yeah.
Right. When you've been through what you've been through, I
Yeah.
mean, I'm curious, was there a certain place or a few places that, really you kept drawing on the stories, the history, like that, that you found unexpectedly healing during your period of suffering? What were those places, if there are any?
Well, I would say Auschwitz, because
Yeah.
there were the places of the worst tragedies, and and I'm sure that is the place where I have been, I mean, I hate to compare, there's tragedies that, I mean, there's
Right.
other places of genocide that are horrible and awful, but the number of people in the small area that were killed, murdered,
Horrifying. Just,
and the medical experiments, and but yet people made it through there. They not only made it through there, they lived good lives, some of them, and I'm sure they are always suffered with some level of trauma, but they got through. And so the greatest places of hell, and actually you look at the Bible, you look at other, Churchill's words really resonated with me when I was recovering because I hurt so bad. I felt so good because I could tell my liver disease was just
Right.
gone. It was like curative. I mean, you're out with the old, in with the new, and you're just changed overnight. But I was still, your stomach was,
Right.
your ab was completely slashed open, and so I'm suffering with that and the recovery. And I would hear Winston Churchill talking to me. It was like, when you're going through hell, keep going. And and they, like in the Bible, they talk about, I'm not a big religious nut, but they talk about, Jesus was in hell for 40 days, and then he, and it's like, the greatest stories in history are people that have gone through hell and they keep going. And
I'm curious,
yeah,
if someone is going through hell, they're going through a horrible time, they're in their own dark period and difficulties, and they have an opportunity to travel. What's a beginner-friendly,
yeah.
maybe itinerary you would put together, for lack of a better way to put it, that doesn't, commoditize things, but, will lead them to places that are considered dark tourism, that will have profound unlocks potentially for them.
Yeah, and I'm not even saying this to sell my book, but I would
Right.
say starting off with something like my book, where you're going through and it's, you can be kind of an armchair dark tourist by reading books like that. And so that's an in. But you can look at, I mean, you don't have to be rich to go, you don't have to travel to Auschwitz. You don't have to, I mean, starting off local. I mean, there's, draw a circle, 50-mile radius circle, and you're going to find dark tourism types of spots. And, and chances are they're not going to be super heavy. So, venturing out and really stepping into some of those spots. There's hallowed ground in almost every city. There's a cemetery, and if you walk through your local cemetery, chances are it's going to be park-like. It's going to be, it's serene. It's peaceful. And just looking at the different headstones, and you can learn a lot. Some people, their day of death might have been the same day that they were born. I mean, and you just kind of like, oh gosh, that was somebody's kid, and that they likely died giving birth, and gosh, how did that affect their parents? And and yeah, it's horrible and it's tragic to think about that stuff, but again, because you are kind of gifted in a way when you honor other people by again, it kind of like you sort of live on, you allow their memory to live through you a little bit, and you just become a stronger version of yourself when you do that, especially when you do it enough. And and then over time you can go to bigger and better, or I shouldn't say better, it's not better, but bigger, more significant places, deeply reverent places.
Do you feel like, anyone should avoid dark tourism, or do you think that there are certain people for which this would be just too much for them to handle?
Well, for sure. I'm going to step back. Anybody who goes in for sensationalistic reasons, especially if you're going, I mean, there's places where you can go in for sensationalistic reason. It's not a big deal. Where it's like, okay, if you're going on a haunted walking tour through LA, it's not,
Right.
like you can
Right.
go there and you can joke around, to some degree, but they might tell serious stories like the Black Delilah, you go, it's like, okay, maybe it's time to, when they talk about that, maybe you should just sit back and listen rather than make jokes. But there's places like that, okay, it's not, you can go in a little bit for sensationalism. There's the
Right.
London Dungeon where they have, they talk about the plague and Jack the Ripper,
Right.
and places like
Right.
that where, okay, it's kind of actually fun to go through there. They have
Right.
actors in there, and they use this gallow humor, like off with his head, haha, and
Right.
and it's kind of fun, but at the same time, that's a good entry into dark tourism too, is going to things like that. But going into Auschwitz with that, and you're taking selfies and that, okay, no, I mean that's
No.
awful, yeah. So I would say, what's your motivation for going? That would be the number one question. Number two is, yeah, can you emotionally handle it? Some people are just so empathetic, and where you might want to start off at a lower level place, like if somebody was, I guess you'd call them an empath. If you're an empath and you just take on other people's emotions and you make them your own, yeah, I would not say go to Whitney Plantation or go to even the 9/11 Memorial or Pearl Harbor or Auschwitz and Nagasaki, Hiroshima. I mean, I would not go to those places if I was an empath, where I was, where I took on other people's emotions in a deep way. But maybe I would go to the local cemetery or one of these haunted tours or whatever, and yeah.
I'm just curious with your work, as a therapist, dark tourism, the personal journey that you have been through, how has all of this changed the way that you see joy?
I would say I appreciate everything in life more. And this might sound corny, and this might sound a little bit like the psychedelic guy. I don't know, and this is where I say there's a lot of crossover.
Right.
Smells smell more beautiful. Sights are more beautiful. Colors are more beautiful. Life is more beautiful when you see it through a different perspective that dark tourism can give a person. And so joy feels more joyous.
I love that. Yeah, it's like every time I come back from a trip, last year I got to go to Kenya and Uganda on
Wow.
a volunteer trip, which is really incredible with this great organization, Because International. And I agree with you, when you go to places that are so different, the landscape changes, the human circumstances change as well. You come back and you just notice things, you notice the way you live your life, the gratitude level for things that people don't have that you have. It changes, it shifts, and I feel like you walk through the world differently.
You do. And it's not like you're going there and you're comparing your life to theirs.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, you see in the more different place you go to. I think that's why people are drawn to some of these anthropology, where it's like, okay, Margaret Mead, the coming of age in Samoa, which is groundbreaking in its time, and or Ruth Benedict, these, or even Jane Goodall with the chimpanzees. You learn about cultures, and sometimes different species cultures that are a lot like humans, and you just learn so much from that different perspective that you come back to your own life, and it just, things change, and it's hard to even put your finger on it. I'm sure some pop psychologist would know what that word would be, but Jordan Peterson or somebody like that's that, but
He's good at that, right?
I think he's really good at talking. I like him, but he talks a lot of bullshit too.
Too funny. What I'd love to do now is transition to our true or false section. So we're going to do a quick round of true or false. And what we're going to do here is I'm going to rattle off a few statements, and you're going to tell us whether they are true or if they're false. And if you need to provide clarity, to be in integrity with something, feel free to do that.
I struggle with true false. True false are harder than multiple choice for me.
Yes, we'll allow for that. If you need to provide clarity, feel free to do that.
All right.
Okay, I'm going to give you the first one. So the first one is, travel is a form of therapy.
Yes, without a doubt. True.
Okay. The second one, dark tourism can actually bring hope.
Oh, without a doubt. True. Yeah.
Grief should be dealt with privately.
False in most cases, yeah.
I'm going to quick unpack.
Yeah.
Give me a few thoughts on that, or a few statements on that.
Grief should be dealt with privately. Grief is, I don't think grief doesn't come with an instruction manual. You can buy books on it, but even the stages of grief, it doesn't go in this linear way. It comes and goes in ripples, and everybody's different, and sometimes people, for example, when I was actually called for my transplant, 5 minutes I got a text message from all my cousins are on this text thing, and I got a text message that my grandma wasn't going to live through the night. She ended up living 3 more days or 2 more days or something. But 5 minutes before I got my phone call so I'm taking a shower to get ready to go down for my liver transplant, and I am bawling in the shower.
Oh, of
and
course.
and it's like I didn't want anybody to see that, So like I say, grief sometimes can be very private, and sometimes, but people shouldn't suffer in their grief, and they need to know that it's okay to talk and to to lean into other people, and people want them to lean into them a lot of the times. And so that's what I mean by sometimes it's private, sometimes it
Right.
yeah.
Right. Thank you for that. Thank
Yeah.
you for sharing that too.
Yeah.
People travel to escape, not to heal.
Oh gosh, that's one of those ones that I would say people travel to escape, but not to heal. That's one of the ones that need unpacking, but false. You know, escaping is healing. So I think when things are going good for me, I'm more likely to go to the mountains or go to the beach or those types of things. And that's one thing that I noticed with dark tourism. When my life started falling apart, I went to dark tourism to put myself together. I don't think I did that on a conscious level. I think once I was able to reflect on my suffering, from when I was healthy again, and it was, it's like, oh my God, I went to Jerusalem when I needed religion, and I didn't go there because I was this religious person. I went there when I was suffering. I went there to find religion. And I came out with some really, and in terms of dark tourism, there's very few places that are as dark as Jerusalem, but it's also a very hopeful place,
Right.
and
Right.
and I would say that with a lot of the places. So, so travel is can be an escape, but escaping can be healing.
Wow, beautifully put. Beautifully put.
Yeah.
I've never been to Jerusalem. I've always wanted to go. Just 2 months ago, I went to Bethany beyond the Jordan. I was in Jordan.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, it was really, really cool. Got to go in the Jordan River and saw literally the Israeli flag across the Jordan River.
Oh, wow.
And for me, it was Easter Sunday. And it was, it was one of those. I don't really consider myself like that much of a religious person, but
Right. Me either.
the history, the story, the conflict, all of the things, I
Yeah.
just felt this incredible rush, sadness, reverence, hope as well.
Yeah.
It was really profound. It was one of those things I really had to sit with, in that moment. So
Yeah. Well, Jerusalem, I mean, so the biggest thing I got of Jerusalem was, it wasn't, I grew up Catholic, and,
Right, me too.
and if you, held a gun to my head, I would say I'm a Christian, but,
Right.
but agnostic, but going there, you see all the stuff, I didn't realize, everything is there for the most part. I mean, you see the room of the Last Supper, and this is the courtyard that Jesus was tried in. This is where they put the thorn of crown, every station of the cross is there. And, this is his prison cell. This is, the tomb of the Virgin Mary is there. And, everything. And you go into the room of the Last Supper, and then you walk out and you go on the roof, and then there's the room or whatever where gosh, no, I'm blanking on the name, but not Benjamin Netanyahu, anyway, it was the president of Israel at that time, or the prime minister.
Pontius Pilate?
No, of the 6 Day War, which was 50 years ago or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah,
never mind. Okay.
Yeah. So, but anyway, you're going there. It's you go on the roof, and there's history at every single. I guess point is there's history at every single corner, and it's not even necessarily ancient history. Some of it's 50 years ago history, and the Jewish quarter. So the Jewish quarter was burnt down, and then they rebuilt it. During this, after the 6 Day War. And so, but you got the Armenian quarter, the Jewish quarter, the Christian quarter, the Muslim quarter. And for the most part, they kind of intermingle. I mean, that's what I came away is these people have such, such profound beliefs. And that's what I got out of it. It's okay, there's these three very different religions that they all kind of intermingled to some degree if you track their history back, and actually it goes back to the Dome of the Rock, where on the Temple Mount there they have this rock that actually Christians aren't allowed to. It's Muslims only in there, but they have this rock, whereas called the Foundation Rock, where it was the rock that the world was built off. It's the rock that Muhammad was said to have ascended to heaven. It's the rock where I can't remember. This is where my Bible knowledge ends, but where somebody in biblical times was going to behead his son, and so like all the religions are kind of based off this rock,
Right.
and
Right.
like
Yeah.
so it's like what I got out is like there's only like maybe 0.5% of people that just really hate each other. At least when I went there, it was just before all the fighting and stuff. But yeah, the how much people believed is what resonated with me the most. And I
agree.
Again, I wrote this in my book. I said, yeah, I didn't come out a sweater wearing, churchgoer, but I came out somebody who really deeply believes in something. And I can't tell you even what that is, but I do believe in something.
Right. Totally agree. And I think it's a journey, sometimes it can be a journey of
Yeah.
questioning and learning and then questioning it again. And, I think that, like that, if you believe in faith in a higher power, God, Allah, whatever it may be, I think it's important to have that as a part of your practice, the questioning and the reaffirming and figuring out also to having the space to figure out what works for you, what you believe in as well.
Right. Well, I came out with this thought about like every religion is a different compass, but all those compasses point to magnetic north, and what is magnetic north? That's God, and that is bigger than all of us can understand individually and even as a religion, so.
Agree.
That's what I believe.
Agree. That's actually a great way to put it. I felt the same way. There was a profound moment when I was getting into the Jordan River, and then people from the Israeli side were getting in on Easter Sunday at the same time. And I was just like, you're right. Like there's different compasses, but we're all kind of pointing.
Yeah.
I believe, I agree, to
Yeah.
the same direction.
Yeah.
So anyway, I totally derailed us from our true or
No,
false.
that's fine.
So the next one we have here is travel rewires your brain.
Yes. I can take things very literally. So I'd say everything rewires your brain, but I think travel rewires it much more deeply than a lot of other experiences. And I think, again, some of these things like psychedelics, and I've never done psychedelics. I want to, but I never have. So psychedelics, and I'm thinking in terms of, even what research would say, but psychedelics, profound travel experiences, I would say the most significant dark tourism spots, would count. The astronaut effect, somebody dying or somebody being close to death, near-death experiences, those types of things. Those are absolutely life-changing, life-shifting, and change your neurochemical makeup like that, and yeah.
How about this next one? Most people don't know how to grieve properly.
That's a tough one. I would say that's true. I mean, grief doesn't come with an instruction manual, and it's I think we have these preconceived notions of how we need to grieve, and they're just simply wrong. Grieving is a very individual process, and we all grieve at different rates, and grief, we might be just fine, when somebody passes, or we grieve a divorce or grieve whatever it is.
Right.
We might be just fine. And then 6 months later it hits us, and it just took the right, or you're stuffing it, or you're self-medicating it, or, so yeah. Yes. People don't, I guess, yeah, I would say that's true, that people don't know how to grieve properly for the most part. Yeah.
That's, there's no, and people don't talk about it a lot, I feel like.
It's a taboo subject.
taboo subject.
People, yeah. And it needs to be talked about. And again, that's why dark tourism, I think, is really important, because it's in your face.
Yeah, exactly.
And
It's literally standing on
and yeah, walking through the darkness, that's where you find the light.
So true. This next one, trauma-informed travel is a growing trend.
True. A lot of these places, and that's really where maybe the new ethical dilemma of dark tourism could come in, where I think a lot of people are learning this, and I want them to, because it's really important. But people are flocking more to places like Auschwitz and Hiroshima, and I'm not the person to say, it's too many, or how many is too many, but I think, without a doubt, it's a growing trend because more people are visiting places like that. Yeah. And I would say, there's more places like that. There's endless places like this, unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know, but you don't have to go to the darkest place on earth to find darkness. It's unfortunately all over.
Yeah. How about this next one? Visiting historic prisons or cemeteries is just morbid curiosity.
Well, it depends on the person's motivation. I mean, if you're going to a cemetery or a prison to kind of get your rocks off, right. It's a question you have to ask yourself, So I would say that is false, because it's not just morbid curiosity. I think that a small percentage of people that go to those places, it is morbid curiosity, but I would say the vast majority of people that go, it's not.
How about this next one? The body holds trauma and movement helps release it.
True, with some caveats. You can't get rid of all trauma by body movement, but you certainly can make a lot of progress. A couple of weeks ago, I went to a conference in Boston, and it was put on by the Trauma Institute, the big research institute. But anyway, Bessel van der Kolk was the big speaker, and he did the book "The Body Keeps the Score," and they talked a lot, the various speakers, about how movement can definitely help with trauma. But also music and documentaries. Documentaries is a kind of a is similar to dark tourism, and I think too where it doesn't have to be a dark. It can be a documentary on Michael Jordan. Like, okay, what struggles did he go through as a kid and as an adult, right. And he his dad dying, and there's a lot of okay, so as long as you're seeing reflections in other things. I would say argue dark tourism. I mean, it's almost impossible to not see reflections of yourself when you go in, in the proper mindset. But, right. Going to places where, people live that you look up to, and, that can be helpful for trauma too. And I don't know, talk about rabbit hole. I went on a rabbit hole there. But.
No, that's really, yeah. I love what you said about documentaries. I think that, for me, travel, documentaries, historical books, it takes you outside of yourself. Sometimes you were talking about, you get so caught in your whatever is happening, and I'll never get out of this, and this is the war. And you read stories of unfortunate suffering or trials and tribulations, and you see, people were able to triumph, and humans are resilient, and it helps, at least for me, in my personal opinion, it's helped for me to reframe situations that I thought were just simply insurmountable.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you one last true or false.
Yeah.
Travel helps us gain a broader sense of humanity.
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah. I like talking about my son because he's a 25-year-old. He's a mayor. He's a firefighter. He's a social worker. He was valedictorian. He pulled straight A's in college. But I would say the stuff that really impacted his life the most were his travels. He might not even admit to this. He'd probably get mad at me for even talking about it. But but I think it's more than the education is your life experiences. Education can help compartmentalize, but puts you in a box. People that can think outside that box, and when you step outside of your comfort zones again, and you get into those other cultures, and you taste new foods, and you pray with people that are of completely different religions. Like one of the most moving things for me was I went when I was in Kyoto. I went to a Buddhist service, and they
Me
did this
too.
chanting,
Yes.
but
Yes.
it really reminded me a lot of being in a Christian church or a Catholic church,
Right.
where because of the incense and the chant, they were given. I don't had no idea what they're talking about, but they were talking, and then they would go into these chants, and it very much, a lot of kneeling. That's all we did was kneel,
Yes.
the whole time,
Yes. Yes.
and yeah, and it's like people on the exact opposite side of the earth do almost the same things we do, but just in a very, different language, different, but it's so similar in a lot of ways too. Like we're all the same on the inside, and it's just our circumstances that change us, and that really puts it into stark perspective when you see that.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Would say too, one of the things I've learned that I feel like you don't really learn explicitly in school, just the kindness of humanity.
Yeah.
I solo travel, a ton, and I've been to places where no one looks like me. I don't speak the language, and one of my favorite moments was I was in Bangkok and I was by myself and was trying to go to, oh gosh, I forget where. But anyway, I was in this like random part of Bangkok and there was like a ton of traffic. I couldn't get around. It was a hot mess. Like it was just one of those days. And I'm just standing trying to get a taxi or get back on the bus or something. I was lost. And I'd been standing there maybe for like 20 minutes, and this man comes out of this like super rickety shop, like a tire shop, and he brings me a chair. And he can't speak English, but he's like, he points to me. He's like,
Yeah.
"You sit," and and I was just
Yeah.
like, I was in tears. I mean, I couldn't even. I mean, this.
You're right.
I'm just like this random woman standing on this side, and just like I've had so many situations like this. I feel like
Yeah.
travel's taught me about just the kindness of humanity, the generosity of people, and that the world is mostly a good place.
Absolutely.
Is what I feel like I've learned.
Yeah, I feel so bad because a lot of the people that would benefit so much from traveling can't afford to travel, and,
It's
and
true.
that
Yeah.
breaks my heart. And I wish I had an answer for that, and I wish
I know.
could
Me too.
I wish I was rich and could send people on, that needed it. You know, oh gosh, how would I say this with being politically correct? There's a lot of people in our country, especially compared to a lot of other
Right.
countries, that really
Right.
need to experience other places,
Yeah. Yeah.
and they
Yeah.
don't, and
Right.
and they think their point of view is the only point of view, and that's not. It's like
Right.
there's so many different ways of looking at a situation, and I say look at it through humanity's eyes, not your eyes,
Agree.
and
Agree.
and it's life changing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, on that beautiful note, I want to transition to our rapid fire. So in this
Yeah.
section, love this section because we get to, ask you a few rapid questions, some about yourself.
Okay.
I'm going to choose just a few of these at random and, just give us some, short answers
Sure.
on some of these trending questions. So I'm actually curious as a fellow traveler, what travel ritual do you never skip?
I was thinking of that, and I don't know if I have a travel ritual that I never skip.
Interesting.
You know,
Okay.
I'm and I was actually prepared to answer this, because I have learned that over the years that if I had a travel ritual, let's bring my phone, but,
Right.
make sure I don't forget my charger, which I do all the time, but. So yeah, maybe that's my travel ritual is try to remember my charger when I leave a hotel room. But
Right.
I don't even carry a suitcase anymore. I carry a carry-on. I have a carry-on suitcase. But
Okay.
it's been many years since I checked baggage. Even when I've gone places for weeks, I just
No way.
I pack the thinnest pants. I like the windbreaker type pants. So
Right.
if it's unless it's going to be a really cold place, I just have these windbreakers and a couple pairs of shorts, and so I've learned to pack real
Amazing.
lightly, and yeah, so a travel ritual. I've learned to not have I used to really dig into those travel books, and now I still buy a travel book. I mean, I love Rick Steves if I go to Europe, and
Me too.
I mean,
Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
and so. But I've learned that, so I still get the travel books. I'll flip through them and kind of have a sense. But I don't like to plan. I'll go to places without even getting a hotel room. I went to Egypt. I went to Egypt. Didn't have a hotel room.
Same.
Found one. I got a $50 hotel room. It wasn't it had a used bar of soap for my soap, and okay. But it was right at the Great Pyramid was right there, and and the Sphinx was just down there. And it's like it was right there, and I had a balcony overlooking this. $50 a night. It's
Incredible.
like, okay, I sacrifice a few things for this beautiful view, and I overheard them. The night talk that they give there, and it's just like you can't beat that. And I found that in a lot of places. Every once in a while, I get burned where oh gosh, now I'm paying double for a hotel room.
Same.
But
Me
for the most
too.
part, I've saved money doing it that way. Yeah.
Yeah.
It just happened to me in
too.
Boston. I didn't have a hotel room my last night there. Just figured I'd get a cheap one after my conference is over, and I ended up paying $400 for a airport hotel room.
Yeah. So I feel like it all balances out in the end. My poor family. Sorry, parents. I love you guys very much. I know you guys are so sick of me at the last minute going places with no plan.
Right.
They're like, where are you staying? What's going on? When's your flight? I'm like, I'll just wing it. And I know my poor parents are clutching their.
Yeah, I know my mom would agree to you. My mom would agree with you with that. That's exactly how I do it too. Norway was like 2 weeks notice. I just, hey, $750 Norway? Okay, I'm going.
I do the same.
Yeah.
I do the same. People are like, this. We can't hang with you, or anyone who's planning a trip with me already kind of knows going into it.
Yeah.
I'll be coming in at the last minute.
Yeah. Well, the thing is too is if you overplan a trip, I see that. I used to just Google to death. The hotel rooms, the agendas, again get the Rick Steves books, get the and I just plan it out. And then it's like it's hard to break off those plans. It's like, oh no, I gotta rush through here. Oh, I didn't get to Versailles. Oh my gosh, And then if you go and you're just kind of wing it, you kind of know where things are, and you got a plan, and
Yeah, I agree. I love it. I love it.
Yes.
Same.
Yeah. And then you end up in these off the beat places, which is where you want to be. You don't want to be in the tourist traps.
Agree.
And you end up in the cool places, not the popular places.
Yeah. I like to travel. I always say I want to allow for the yes. If something crazy happens, I meet someone really cool, and I'm like, that's a yes.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I have the space to be able to do that. I'm not so constricted to schedule.
Right.
Yeah. I love it. I love it.
Mm-hmm. And one thing that and I don't think Rick Steve is going to like me for saying this, but so one thing that I have been doing lately. So about a year ago, I got ChatGPT, and I've traveled. I've okay, what's I'll see something. Actually, in Japan, I had this, so that was my first big trip.
Right.
It was after I had my transplant, and I'm trying to get this last place in, which was Hiroshima, so I could write my book. That I wanted to make sure I got to Hiroshima. And so I just take pictures of things. What does this say? So it tells me what it's saying in Japanese, and and what are the things around Kyoto, and okay, tell me more about the black rain that fell after the bomb dropped, and so you could add more to your tours visits, and you got to realize that it's wrong once in a while, but
yes, for sure, right.
What time does the bullet train come? And it really was very helpful in a lot of those regards.
It's so helpful. We were just in Luxor in April, and my boyfriend and I used ChatGPT around Luxor Temple. We kind of planned the last minute, couldn't get a guide. We're like, let's try ChatGPT, and we used the voice feature in order to narrate us around Luxor Temple. It was actually really helpful. It was really good.
That would be cool.
Really good.
Yeah, I didn't know about. I knew about ChatGPT, but I didn't have ChatGPT when I went to Luxor. And it's like, how cool would that have been to just take pictures of these different things you're seeing on the walls?
Yep.
Yeah, so you see the hieroglyphics and you take a picture. It would interpret it for you.
It was amazing. It was incredible. It was
now that makes me want to go back
really
there.
Cool.
I did hire an Egyptologist to show me around a little bit, but
Yeah. That's always, you can't replace that experience with being with someone
right,
who's,
yeah,
like that in itself is an experience,
yeah,
the human
yeah,
connection there. But if you're in a
yeah,
pinch, hey, ChatGPT really pulled through for us. We had a
yeah.
great experience.
Yeah, yeah, but it's like I went to the Luxor Temple and the Karnak Temple with this
Yep,
Egyptologist,
yep,
you
yep,
know, and he
yep,
reminded
yep.
me of like the Egyptian Anthony Bourdain. He was just the coolest guy ever, and we
Oh, I
sat in
love
this
that.
hookah shop and drinking
Oh,
tea afterwards, and
that's
and it was just like you see the curly smoke, and oh, it was just magical.
so
But
amazing.
but when I went over to Valley of the Kings, it's like I didn't have any of that
Right,
stuff, and like I'm
right,
just kind of left to my own devices,
right,
and
right.
you still get, I
Yeah,
mean, you still feel it, but it's, yeah, it'd been nice. Yeah,
it's
I wish I
different.
had
Yeah.
ChatGPT for that, especially.
Yeah,
Yeah,
super helpful. Super
yeah,
helpful.
yeah.
I'm curious, what's the most misunderstood emotion? Kind of transitioning here. What would you say?
No, anger, anger,
Unpack.
anger is almost always a secondary emotion. So, I mean, if somebody punches you in the face, you're going to get angry and punch them back. I mean, so
Right.
that's normal. But as a therapist, when I see anger, it's almost like, okay, what else is going on? What were the underlying emotions that caused you to get angry? And and it's really boils down to that fight flight, and it's kind of it comes from the same exact part of the brain, your amygdala, and so a lot of the times it's anxiety, a fear that causes you to get angry. So if if somebody yells at their girlfriend, it's usually because they felt insecure about something. They like their girlfriend was talking to another guy. Well, it's because
Right.
you're worried about losing her. That's a fear. That's why you got angry, because of your fear. So it's almost always, I would say it's almost always anxiety underlying anger. Not always, but
Listen,
almost always.
didn't know that. Very,
Yeah.
very interesting. I love asking travelers this one. One place you never go back to.
I don't know that again, that's a really hard one. So a place that I'm not itching to go back to, I got a couple of them, I think. So I would go back, but so I don't think there's any place I wouldn't go back. I want
Right,
to say
right,
that. I
right.
love Bob Marley. I love hanging out on the beach once in a while, but I don't think I would ever go back to unless I had to, unless I was with somebody that,
Right,
that I really
right.
loved and they wanted to go, but an all-inclusive beach resort where you can't.
You're you are like, well, I'm already like with you.
Yeah, yeah, you're
Yeah,
stuck there. It's like,
yeah, yep. I was
and
in same place, Jamaica. Was it all inclusive with my sister, and we were both like, we're so grateful to be here, but this is not it for us. Like this is
yeah,
not,
yeah,
our travel vibe. We'll put it
yeah,
that way. It works for
yeah.
other people, and like more power to you. But just for us, it wasn't our thing. Yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah. When I was there, like when I was at the all inclusive, so went to Negril, but then
Right.
which was cool, but it's like, okay, I'm like I can only hang out on the beach maybe a day, and then it's like,
Right.
okay, now I
Right.
need to see stuff, and there wasn't much else to
Right.
see. I didn't find anyway. But then we were in Montego Bay, and that's where we had the all inclusive. It's like my biggest memory, and I wrote about this. My biggest memory there was going to the Rose Hall, which was the.
Yeah. Yes.
Did you
Yes.
go to Rose Hall?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Yes.
you
Yes.
learn about Annie, the White Witch of
Yes.
Rose Hall, and all the
Right.
horrible
Right.
things she did, and
Right.
and again, that's another plantation. It wasn't, certainly wasn't as emotional as the Whitney Plantation,
Right.
but it's another one that talks about it more from the slave point of view, and it doesn't glorify the plantation. At least this tour I went on, I went on a night tour, and they actually had people dressed up as ghosts walking around, and it was really bizarre.
Oh,
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah,
Wow. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. I have to agree with you with that one.
yeah.
I'm curious too for you, solo travel or group trips?
Solo for sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Wow. Do you ever
yeah.
get lonely on solo trips?
Never. No, no.
Interesting.
I really don't get lonely. I again, I
Unpack
think,
that. Yeah.
yeah, well,
I-
yeah, I think Dr. Freud would need to unpack that. But, but yeah, I think being a Stoic, you really learn to be comfortable being by yourself. And I just, even after my divorce, I really longed for my wife. It wasn't my
Yeah,
decision to
of
get
course.
divorced, and I really longed for her. But I never felt lonely. I never felt, I felt maybe insecure a little bit, like how am I have to build friends again, and kind of find my own life. But yeah, I never like sit home and like, gosh, am I lonely? Because I'll get out and go do something.
Right.
And when I'm traveling, I'm busy, and I don't stay in the nicest places because it's like I'm out doing things all the time, and
Right.
I come
Right.
back just to
Right.
sleep.
Right.
And so I don't know. I talk to people, and sometimes I don't. Sometimes I just want to be by myself, and I guess maybe part of that's I'm an introvert too, and
Mm.
I mean I can turn my extrovert on, but I'm for the most part an introvert, and I
Right.
like my alone time.
Interesting. Interesting. I'm curious about this one. What is probably, if you had to pick one, the most surprising moment on one of your trips?
The most surprising moment. Oh, good question. I guess I don't know if it was a moment, but you hear about France and like, oh, they're so rude, and they're and the very first person I met in France was rude, and I've been to France a few times now. That was the only person that I met that was rude. Was the first person
Yeah. Yeah.
and like
Yeah.
I've loved the French people.
Yeah. I've
So
been so
I think there's these stereotypes that until you go there, to wherever it is, a lot of these stereotypes are just, I don't know, they're not true.
It's so true. I've had the same experience in France. I think it's also the energy you put out. Like if you come expecting people to
Yeah,
be rude, then you'll act in a very defensive way. And I feel like
yeah,
people
maybe, yeah, that's a good
pick up
point.
on that energy. I've had the most helpful, kindest people
Yeah,
in Paris, especially where people talk specifically about
right,
Parisians.
right.
I had for my last day in Paris once. I had spent all my euros, and for whatever reason, like my card wasn't working. I couldn't get on the train to get to the airport. And this couple like saw me like struggling, and they're like, Here's some money," and they just were like, "We'll pay
Oh
for
my
your ticket."
gosh.
I was like, "Oh my gosh, thank you I was just by myself, like struggling, and that time I didn't speak any French. This was
Yeah,
maybe like 20 years ago, and yeah, just moments like that where people are just kind and like giving things,
yeah,
and
yeah.
I think sometimes
Well,
it's the
yeah, and
energy.
I would say anywhere you travel, as long as you know hello,
Yes, yes,
thank
agree,
you. I mean, if you know
agree.
hello and thank you, that's 90%,
Agree.
of
Agree. And people are so
yeah,
grateful that you tried,
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. I was so happy
Amazing.
when I called Moulin Rouge, and I said, "Est-ce que vous comprenez l'anglais?" Which is, "Do you speak English?" And I
Yeah,
think somebody's probably correcting me,
that's what.
and it's like I felt so proud of myself that I said a whole sentence
Mm.
in French. Yeah, and they're like,
Oh my
"Yes, I
gosh.
speak English." Well,
Yeah, yeah,
and
that's what happens
most
to
places
me.
I go, they do speak English. Is
Oh, that's what happens to me. I've been trying to learn French over the last like 2 years, and my French is horrible, horrible. I will go and I will try to speak, but people hear me just butcher it, and they're like, "Man, she's just butchering," and they just start speaking to me in English.
right?
They're like,
Yeah,
"No,
yeah, and
not so much you."
yeah, English is, for the most part, I mean, not everybody, but there's a lot of places that they at least know a little bit of English.
Yeah,
And
for
yeah,
sure.
so when people are scared of traveling because of the language barrier, I have never had
Me
a
either. Even in
significant
China.
issue. Minor issues, no significant issues
Yeah.
ever.
The only time I ever had an issue was in China. I ended up eating salamander and getting sick because we didn't know it
Oh,
was salamander. But
oh,
that was
wow.
the only
Yeah.
time I
Oh,
ever had an
yeah. Yeah.
issue.
Yeah. Yeah.
Otherwise, it's fine. It's been
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah, and yeah, my next book probably is like how to do world travel with being a picky eater because I am a super picky eater,
Oh
and
man,
which
that must
is
be
too bad
difficult.
because I really think food is such a cultural thing,
Right, right,
but
right, right, right.
yeah, so I mean I do try, but it takes a lot of trying.
Yeah, yeah. Salamander. Ooh, I think
Yeah,
you should
no,
skip that one.
no
Skip
way,
that one.
yeah, no,
I want to move on to our breaking down wild trends. So what we've done is we've
yeah,
gone to some of these social media platforms to find out what people are talking about when it comes to dark tourism, so on and so forth. So I'm going to ask you this first one that we found. Grief tourism, using travel to process loss. Is it actually helpful? People are talking about grief tourism all around social media.
Okay. Well, actually, I didn't know that, but yeah, I would say grief tourism is definitely something that especially if you stick it in the realm of dark tourism. Again, boils down to motivations, and but if you're going to memorialize or to reflect on the life of a loved one, yeah, without a doubt, I don't, I think. Turning towards pain is often a good thing to do. Maybe not physical pain, but emotional pain. Turning towards your pain is sometimes the only way to walk through it. And it's a dark door, but when you walk through it, there is another other side to that pain. And a lot of times, and I think again, dark tourism is a big piece of this, where you find meaning in pain, you find meaning in darkness, and when you can do that, and when you get good at doing that, you can definitely lead a more productive life. And I think when you're grieving, you can do this, something very similar.
Thank you. That's super helpful. I want to ask you one more trend that
Yeah.
we'd love to discuss. So we've been seeing these transformation trips led by influencers. Do you feel like they do more harm than good?
Oh, I don't know a ton about that. I would say it depends on the influencer, and it depends
Yeah.
on are they an expert, or are they again just a kind of a popular person that, ooh, I want to go hang out with this TikToker, and okay, why are you going, and what are they actually showing you, and can you believe it, and can you, because I don't know, that's how cults are made, like you get people that are kind of vulnerable, and you go do something together that's profound, and you're being led to believe something that is completely delusional. And so I would say if you truly trust it, and they're and if people are saying, are you sure you would want to do that, maybe you shouldn't, and think twice about it. But so yeah, it depends on the person. If it was Rick Steves leading it, sign me up. But
Me too. And Samantha Brown.
it depends. Yeah, Samantha Brown. Yes, yeah. She would.
I'm
Oh,
going.
she was my first travel crush. Yeah,
Me too.
yeah,
Yeah. Like she was my travel icon,
yeah. Honestly, the first show that I loved that was a travel show was Dave Attell's. He did a show called Insomniac, and
Oh, I know.
a comedian.
Right. Right.
And yeah, he would go to all these different towns, and it was when I was 16, and he would go,
Right.
party, but he'd also talk about culture and things like that were, and you'd take selfies with people with the old plastic disposable phones, and he was my first.
So,
Yeah, I see him more as a travel person than a comedian, to be honest.
how cool.
Yeah,
How cool.
yeah,
I'm gonna watch that. I'll have to check that one out.
yeah,
Very
yeah.
cool. Some old episodes. Cool. We're gonna do one thing. We're gonna quickly jump into what we call the Reddit rabbit hole. So
Okay.
our team also goes on Reddit and we scour to find what people are talking about related to, travel and dark tourism. We found
Yeah.
two that I want to ask you about. So
Sure.
this first one was in the Ask Anthropology subreddit. And the person says, what kind of cultural theory lies behind dark tourism when tourists visit sites of murder and horror, such as Chernobyl, 9/11, sites of genocide? What motivates people to go to such places is what they ask. So I'd love for you to address this.
So the actual social theory, I'm not a social psychologist, so I couldn't probably give you the academic theory, but I would say people, like, for as a therapist, going to places of tragedy and finding meaning is in line with Viktor Frankl's logotherapy. And so I would say that is, I mean, I believe that that's one of my main motivators especially when I went to Auschwitz, where he developed his theory, and Stoic philosophy, where you go and you'll learn that on an emotional level that there's things you can control and can't control, and and you just want to live a more virtuous, healthy life, and so I think those are theories. What else? I think people go again to pay their respects and to not remembrance of people's suffering, to honor people. Like that Dr. Philip Stone, he talks about a thing called mortality mediation, and that is going and stepping into dark tourism spots and kind of doing what I did, So he was the theorist behind at least the current day language of, and the academic research base comes from him. A lot of it comes from him. And I'm kind of the person that, he's writing about, where it's like, I'm going to all these places and these reflections are coming back to, because I'm going in and with such reverence and trying to, going in with empathy, those come back and impact me in a lot of healthy ways.
Interesting. Very, very, very interesting. Yeah, I feel like when you are, at least I'm speaking from my experience, when I'm in a place where, things start to feel overwhelming in my day-to-day life, going to a place of such significance, of such, tragedy, of such, at least for me, it's been a reframe. It's kind of snapped me out of the, and that's why I've been to those places. Not the history, the reverence, the understanding, but also to kind of break the cycle of, being in my own head. It's been really powerful.
Well, and that's where I was kind of going with that astronaut, the overview effect, or the psychedelics, or in having these near-death experiences. Going to places of dark tourism, I mean, these places, it's like you can be, when you're in your own suffering, doing having one of these things happen to you, or going to one of these places, it definitely, it rips you apart and it puts you back together. It's kind of like you're going through boot camp in a day. I mean, not really, but kind of.
Totally.
Psychological boot camp.
Psychological.
Yeah.
We have another one for you. So this one was actually in the Ukraine subreddit. So someone said, dark tourism, and they, put quotes around it, on the rise in Ukraine. Is war tourism educational or unethical?
Well, okay, so the way it's written, I would say that's unethical. So to me, if you're going to go into a war zone and you're doing it to get off, to go there and to see fighting and bloods and guts and are you hoping to see war happen in front of you? I mean, are you getting off on having a bomb possibly fall on your head? I mean, what hole are you trying to fill by doing that is what I'm asking. It's like, you need to see a therapist. You don't need to see war, when you're in that, if you're that type of person. If you're that much of a thrill seeker, there's other ways to do that without putting your life in danger, and probably putting other people's life in danger by getting in the way of things. And, so to me, that's stupid. If you're going there and you're going there to help with, like if you're going there, I could see myself going to Ukraine even now and bringing people blankets and food. And okay, you're a humanitarian, you're not a dark tourist.
Yeah.
Do you get some of the same benefits as being a dark tourist? Absolutely, but you're going there for the right reasons. It, again, boils down to the motivation
Yeah. And the intention.
and the intention.
Agreed.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. And I feel like too, there's I've seen, a lot of journalists there, of course,
Yeah.
I think that's a different
Yeah,
bucket as well,
absolutely.
with being there to
Absolutely.
report the story and show show people's stories, show humanity suffering so that we understand what's
Absolutely.
happening and can,
Well, right. I mean, if
respect.
you didn't have Anderson Cooper or something like that sitting
Yeah, exactly.
in Ukraine telling you I just saw people shot over here or whatever. So and so was telling me about their child killed. I mean, when we think about war, if we don't see the human side behind that, how is that any different than thinking about a war that happened 2,000 years ago? There's a big difference. It's happening now, and we can prevent it from happening. We can help people. We can maybe stop that war. And so war correspondents are heroes, in my opinion. Most of them, it depends on, I guess, how they're broadcasting it. But
Yeah, and intentionality is key.
exactly.
You
Right.
know,
Yeah.
what's the intention?
Right.
So key.
Yeah, because it also can go with psychological warfare. I mean, that if you're going there and you're
Yep.
trying to convince somebody of something that shouldn't be convinced because it's not true, that's
It's
different.
a whole other,
Yep.
intentionality
Yep.
is so
Yep.
key. I want to move on to our
Yeah.
last segment for today, which we like to fondly call "What's in the Bag."
Yeah.
I love
And
this
since
one.
I'll say I'm a minimal tourist.
Yeah.
I don't have a ton in my bag, but I literally brought my bag here today. So the
I
very
can't
first
wait
thing,
to see it.
very first thing I bring is my headphones, especially my noise cancellation.
Oh, those
yeah,
are nice ones.
yeah, they're Sony, I think. So
They're beautiful.
I have to have those. I probably
Right.
average have them on my head a couple hours a day. So you got to have, if you're a travel writer, you got to have a travel book.
Yeah, gotta have the handy dandy
be
notebook.
able to write your notes at the end of the day. Either lotion or sunscreen.
Same, both.
Yep,
I have.
yep.
Yep.
Yeah. Hand sanitizer.
Yep.
Especially after COVID, I think that's definitely one that is. Okay, what else? I just had this, and I don't have the new license, so I had to bring my passport. So this is literally getting unpacked from my Boston trip. So I brought my passport because my license doesn't work anymore.
Oh, the real ID.
Yeah, I don't have the real ID.
Yeah, passport's key. I always say before I leave a place. I'm like, passport, wallet, phone, computer. I'm like, anything else,
Yeah,
who cares? But
yeah,
those are the things.
yeah.
I love it.
Yeah,
I
and
love it.
I actually don't even bring my computer very often. I spend
I
more time
don't.
worrying about it's gonna get taken. So I got my phone. I can do.
Right.
I just can't sit and type. That's the only bad thing. So I
Right.
take notes and then I come back and type it up and when I
Right.
get home. But so I was planning for my next trip. So I got my Rick Steves Scotland book.
Oh, I've never been to Scotland.
Yeah.
Oh, how cool.
Yeah, a lot of dark tourism in Scotland, for sure.
Oh, yeah.
What else do I got in here?
I
Charger.
just
I'm
love the
surprised I didn't.
anticipation. I'm like, what?
Yeah, I got my charger.
Charger.
That.
Charger.
And the bad thing is a
Charger
lot
check.
of times, when you stay in the cheaper hotel rooms, a lot of times you don't have the plug-in, the male end of the plug-in.
Oh, yeah.
A lot
like
of times I'll
the
be stuck without an
connect.
actual, the connector, the plug-in piece.
Yeah,
But that's really that's about the extent of my bag, I think. Other than that, it's
Ooh.
yeah.
Very practical. A lot of the same things. I always said, I was like, my phone should have like its own Instagram account that just is like focused on the random places it's been charged. Like I feel
Right, yeah.
like I could my
Yeah.
phone would be like,
Yeah.
what is happening? Where am I going? Why am I in this back kitchen in like, Jakarta
Yeah.
being charged?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why am I in this bathroom? Yeah.
Yeah, why
Yeah.
exactly what is happening? I'll give you a whole other like Instagram account or TikTok.
Right. No, that's one thing though. It took years before I became this minimalist traveler, but once you do, I mean, you can be so much more mobile. I mean, getting on a
I'm not
subway
there
with
yet.
getting on a subway with all these suitcases is not easy. So when you just got one little tiny one that you're bringing with you, you're good to go.
You need to teach me your ways. I'm not. I keep trying to. We went to China last year, and the challenge was like, okay, you only can pack in like a carry-on bag. So I go out and I buy those, and I actually never use those like what do you call them? Those like compression bags for my stuff. And literally my bag was like buckling out of the and then oh man, it became like such a cluster on the trip because we have to like reseal them. And it was like my boyfriend and I like trying to reseal them, trying to like looked like we were like stomping grapes, trying to get the air out. They were trying to like sit on the luggage.
You know what? I actually I think I was given those for Christmas one year. Those bags. I've never used them, so now you just reinforce that I'm never going to use them.
No, it actually created more complexity, and then I feel like it was actually worth. I just need to learn how to pack less things. You know?
Yeah. I mean, it took years. I mean, I was probably 40 years old before I got to that point.
Okay, there's hope for me. I just turned 40, so there's hope.
Okay, yes, there definitely is hope. Yeah. By the time you're 45, you'll be taking one bag.
Then I'll be like you, like ready to say, I'm minimalist now, and
yeah. I mean, if I was gonna spend 2 weeks in the winter somewhere, I probably would have to take a big bag, but for the places I've been able to get by.
Oh, that's amazing. That's a skill in itself. Yes. Goal, hashtag goals.
And then you wear a lot of stuff. You wear your coat and your winter coat on the plane, and you stuff your pockets with as many things as you can.
I need to get it together. Oh, so funny. So fun. This has just been such a joy. By the way, what are you working on now, and where can we find you online?
I am just working on promoting my book. It came out May 1st.
Congratulations.
Had some awesome critical reviews, Kirkus, San Francisco Book Review, several others that
amazing.
That really were touting how good it is.
I'm doing the book dance.
Writing
a book is no easy feat.
No, it's not at all. It's going to take years before I sit down and do it again. So the audiobook, I'm getting ready for that. That's supposed to come out on June 10th. Awesome. And I noticed just before I hopped on with you, I got an email from them, so I'm going to open that first thing and see if hopefully there's no delays. Okay. And you can find me. My only real active social media is on Facebook. But my website is Dr. is in the initials DR, drchadscott.com. So
amazing.
And learn about me and my book.
So much. Yes, go check out.
And I have a section on there with a lot of dark tourism spots, and so check it out.
Yes. Can't wait. Everyone, we'll link up to it, in the show notes. And just thank you so much for your vulnerability and honesty and just being, curious and adventurous, like inspiring us to be adventurous.
Thank you so much. Well, thank you for having this. Sounds like you're fighting the good fight too. So
thank you. I'm trying.
Yeah.
One day at a time,
Right. Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll talk to you later.